The Defiant Edge. The vast council chamber fell silent as Captain Ilara Chen stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Concord. Holographic projections of various alien species, some humanoid, others utterly foreign in appearance, stared down at her, with expressions ranging from amusement to outright contempt. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture, its crystalline walls pulsing with bioluminescent light that seemed to follow the rhythm of the heated discussions that had preceded her arrival. "The human wishes to address the council," announced Arbitrator Vexnar, his voice echoing through the chamber. The Procyon diplomat's fur bristled with barely concealed impatience regarding the contribution of their military forces. A ripple of laughter spread through the assembly. Ilara forced herself to remain composed, though her fingers tightened imperceptibly around the datapad in her hands. "Contribution. The humans have one ship," barked Ambassador Threll of the Korvax Imperium, his reptilian features twisting into what passed for a smile among his kind. "One, while the rest of us commit entire fleets to this conflict." Ilara stepped forward, her uniform, the deep blue of Earth's United Space Command, stark against the swirling colors of alien diplomats. "The ESS Defiant may be a single vessel, but I assure the Council that humanity's contribution will be significant." "Significant?" Another voice, this one belonging to the gelatinous form of the Ardani representative. "Your species barely crawled from your gravity well a century ago. The technology aboard your contribution is primitive by galactic standards." Ilara had expected this. Humanity had joined the Galactic Concord only 30 years ago, thrust into an interstellar community that had been sailing between stars while humans were still painting on cave walls. Their technology, cobbled together from their own innovations, and what little the other species were willing to share, was considered outdated, inefficient, and crude. "The Kraxi advance unchecked through the Orion Spur," Ilara replied, her voice steady. "They've already conquered 3 systems and show no signs of stopping. Every ship counts, even ours." The Kraxi. The mere mention of them sent a chill through the chamber. A warrior species that had emerged from the galactic east, their fleet a swarm of biomechanical vessels that consumed everything in their path. The Concord races had united against this common threat, but their cooperation was fragile at best. "Very well," Arbitrator Vexnar sighed, making a dismissive gesture with his upper limbs. "The human ship may join the defensive line at Arcturus. Perhaps it will slow the Kraxi down for a few moments before being destroyed." More laughter, but Ilara merely nodded. "The Defiant will be there." As she exited the chamber, Admiral Kurzman's holographic form appeared from her wrist communicator. The weathered face of Earth's military commander looked grim. "How did it go?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "As expected," Ilara replied, striding through the gleaming corridors of the Concord station. "They think we're a joke. The Defiant has been assigned to Arcturus." Kurzman's expression darkened. "Arcturus is where the next major Kraxi push is expected. They're sending you to die, Captain." "Or to prove them wrong," Ilara countered. "The Defiant may not have the energy weapons or quantum shields of the Concord fleets, but we have something they don't. Human ingenuity and human stubbornness," she added with a tight smile. "The upgrades are complete." Kurzman nodded. "Project Prometheus is installed and operational. The Concord doesn't know what we've been working on these past years. They think we're still struggling with basic antimatter containment." "Let them think that," Ilara said, reaching the docking bay where her shuttle waited. "It might be our only advantage." The ESS Defiant hung in space above Earth, a vessel that seemed unimpressive by galactic standards. While Concord warships were elegant, sleek creations of living metal and crystalline structures, the Defiant was blocky, utilitarian, and covered in what appeared to be primitive armor plating. At just under a kilometer in length, it was dwarfed by the massive dreadnoughts of other species. As Ilara's shuttle approached, she gazed upon her command with pride that the Concord representatives would never understand. The Defiant might look crude, but appearances were deceiving. Beneath those armored plates lay humanity's greatest technological achievement, one they had kept hidden from their galactic allies. The shuttle docked, and Ilara was greeted by her first officer, Commander Jackson Way, a stoic man whose calm demeanor belied a brilliant tactical mind. "The crew is ready, Captain," he reported as they walked briskly through the corridors. "All systems are green, and Project Prometheus is online." "Good," Ilara replied, "because we're heading to Arcturus. The Concord has graciously allowed us to participate in the next battle against the Craxi." Way's expression didn't change, but his pace faltered for just a moment. "They're sending us to the front lines, alone." "They're sending us to die," Ilara corrected, "to get humanity out of their hair, or tentacles, or whatever appendages they have. But we're not going to give them the satisfaction." They entered the bridge, a hive of activity, as the crew prepared for departure. The Defiant's control center was nothing like the psychically linked command pods of the Ardani, or the virtual reality environments of the Korvax. It was filled with tactile interfaces, holographic displays, and human beings working in coordinated chaos. "Status report," Ilara called out as she took her captain's chair. Lieutenant Kamila Novak, the ship's tactical officer, responded immediately. "All defensive systems online, Captain. Kinetic barriers at full capacity. Railgun batteries charged and ready. Prometheus core stable at 95% efficiency," added Dr. Isamu Tanaka, the chief engineer, his voice coming through the comm system from deep within the ship. "The modifications are holding better than expected." Ilara nodded, settling into her chair. "Communications, inform Earth Command that we're departing for Arcturus. Navigation, plot a course. We'll use standard drives until we clear the solar system." "Aye, Captain," came the responses in practiced unison. As the Defiant broke orbit and accelerated toward the edge of the solar system, Ilara couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Humanity had poured its resources into this single vessel, a gamble that the Concord species found laughable. But the Defiant carried more than just weapons and a crew. It carried humanity's future among the stars. "We're clear of the solar system, Captain," announced the navigation officer. Ilara leaned forward. "Engage Prometheus drive." The familiar hum of the ship's conventional engines was replaced by a deeper, resonant thrumming that seemed to vibrate through the very atoms of the vessel. Outside the viewport, space itself appeared to bend and fold as the Defiant slipped into what humanity had named fold space, a method of faster-than-light travel unlike the quantum tunneling used by most Concord species. While the galaxy laughed at humanity's perceived primitive technology, they had failed to realize that humans had taken a completely different path in their technological development. Rather than mimicking the established technologies of older species, Earth's scientists had pursued alternative approaches, ones deemed inefficient or impossible by Concord standards. The journey to Arcturus would take 3 days in fold space. 3 days for Ilara and her crew to prepare for what might be humanity's first, and last, major battle as part of the Galactic Concord. "We're being hailed," Lieutenant Sophia Rice, the communications officer, announced as the Defiant emerged from fold space at the edge of the Arcturus system. "It's the Concord flagship, the Radiant Spear." Ilara straightened in her chair. On screen, the imposing visage of Fleet Commander Givexis, a Protean-like arbitrator Vexinar, but with the distinctive scaring of their warrior caste, appeared on the main display. "Captain Chen," the alien commander addressed her, his voice thick with condescension. "You are to take position at the rear of the formation. Your vessel's primitive defenses would not survive the front lines." Ilara fought back the urge to argue. "Understood, Commander. We'll take our position." As the transmission ended, Commander Wei moved closer to Ilara's chair. "They're placing us where we'll have the least impact," he said quietly. "Or where we'll be the least in their way," Ilara replied with a grim smile. "It doesn't matter. When the Craxi come, position won't matter." The Concorde defense fleet was an impressive sight. Over 100 vessels of various designs and origins, from the crystalline ships of the Ardani to the living vessels of the Magellan Collective. Each was a testament to their species' technological prowess, centuries or even millennia ahead of what Earth could produce through conventional means. And yet, as the Defiant took its assigned position at the rear of the formation, Ilara felt a strange sense of calm. The Concorde races had evolved their technology along similar paths, sharing and building upon each other's discoveries. They had become specialized, efficient, but also predictable. Humanity had been forced to innovate in isolation. Craxi fleet detected. Lieutenant Novik's voice cut through the tense silence on the bridge. Multiple signatures emerging from fold space, at least 200 vessels and counting. The main display lit up with the incoming swarm. The Craxi ships were unlike anything else in the galaxy, part organic, part mechanical, resembling massive insectoid predators. They moved with a unity that suggested a hive mind, their formations flowing like dark liquid across the void. The Concorde fleet is engaging, Wei reported, watching as energy weapons and quantum torpedoes lanced out from the Allied ships toward the oncoming threat. Ilara leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Hold position. Wait for my command. The initial exchange was devastating for both sides. The Concorde's advanced weaponry tore through the first wave of Craxi vessels, but the alien swarm adapted quickly, their ships adjusting their biomechanical structures to better absorb or deflect the attacks. In response, they released clouds of what appeared to be metallic spores that attached themselves to Concorde vessels, eating through their defenses. The Ardeni cruisers are taking heavy damage, Novik reported. 3 down already. The Korvax line is holding, but their shield frequencies are being matched by the Craxi. Ilara watched as the elegant battle strategies of the Concorde began to falter against the overwhelming adaptability of the Craxi. The allied species were fighting as they always had, with technologies and tactics that had served them for centuries. But the Craxi were something new, something that didn't play by the established rules of galactic warfare. Commander Wei looked at Ilara expectantly. Captain, we're still holding position, but we could move to support the Magellan flank. They're starting to buckle. Ilara's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display, watching the patterns of the battle unfold. Not yet. Look at how the Craxi adapt to each weapon's signature. They analyze, they evolve. But they've never encountered our technology before. The Concorde fleet's formation was breaking apart now, as more of their ships fell to the relentless Craxi assault. The communication channels were filled with desperate calls for reinforcement and coordination, but the unified command structure was collapsing. Captain, we're receiving a direct transmission from Fleet Commander Zhivexis, Reyes announced, her voice tight with tension. Put him through. The Procyon commander's face appeared, his fur matted with what appeared to be blood, smoke filling the background of his bridge. Human vessel, he barked, dispensing with formalities. Retreat while you can. We've underestimated the Craxi adaptation capabilities. The battle is lost. Ilara stood from her chair, her decision made. No, Commander. The battle has just begun. The Defiant is moving to engage. As the transmission cut off, she turned to her crew. Battle stations. Activate Prometheus shield. All railgun batteries prepare to fire. Navigation. Plot and intercept course straight through the center of the Craxi formation. Wei's eyes widened. Straight through. Captain, that's exactly what they won't expect. Ilara finished for him. The Craxi have adapted to energy weapons and quantum fields. Let's see how they handle good old-fashioned kinetic bombardment and a technology they've never seen before. The Defiant surged forward, its engines glowing with an intensity that caught the attention of both Concorde and Craxi forces. As the human vessel accelerated toward the heart of the enemy swarm, a strange field began to manifest around its hull, not the shimmering barriers of standard shields, but a distortion of space itself. Prometheus shield at full power, reported Dr. Tanaka from engineering. The fold space envelope is stable. Railguns locked on multiple targets. Novak added. Ilara gripped the arms of her chair. Fire at will. The Defiant's main weapons, massive electromagnetic accelerators that the Concorde had dismissed as obsolete, roared to life. Instead of energy beams or exotic particles, they launched hypervelocity slugs of dense metallic alloys, some as small as a fist, others the size of ground vehicles. These projectiles, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, didn't need exotic energy sources to devastate their targets. They carried enough kinetic energy to shatter any known material. And the Craxi, for all their adaptability, had evolved to counter energy-based attacks. The railgun projectiles tore through their biomechanical hulls, causing cascading damage that they couldn't quickly adapt to. Direct hits on 17 Craxi vessels, Novak called out, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. They're not adapting. Ilara allowed herself a grim smile. They will, but not quickly enough. As the Defiant plunged deeper into the heart of the Craxi formation, enemy vessels converged on this new threat, releasing clouds of their metallic spores and firing energy weapons that had decimated the Concorde fleet. But when they struck the Defiant, something unprecedented happened. The Prometheus shield, humanity's greatest secret, didn't try to block or absorb the attacks. Instead, it bent space around them, creating microscopic fold space pockets that the attacks simply disappeared into, emerging harmlessly in random locations thousands of kilometers away. They're surrounding us, Captain. Wei warned, watching as the tactical display showed Craxi vessels encircling the Defiant. Exactly where we want them, Ilara replied. Dr. Tanaka, prepare the Prometheus core for pulse mode. Captain, that's never been tested in actual combat conditions, the engineer protested. The simulations show a 40% chance of core destabilization. Those are better odds than we have otherwise, Ilara said firmly. On my mark. The Defiant was now completely surrounded, taking fire from all directions. While the Prometheus shield continued to function, the strain on the system was evident from the warnings flashing across multiple consoles. Shield efficiency dropping to 70%, reported Lieutenant Novak. We can't maintain this indefinitely. Ilara nodded. We don't need to. All hands, brace for Prometheus pulse. Mark. Deep within the ship, the experimental core that powered both the Defiant's fold space drive and its unique shield surged with energy. What happened next would be described in dozens of different ways by the observers from the Concorde fleet, but none would fully capture the reality. Space itself seemed to fold around the Defiant, creating a bubble of distorted reality that expanded outward in a spherical wave. When this wave passed through the surrounding Craxi vessels, it briefly shifted portions of their structure into fold space, and then back again, but not quite in the same configuration. The result was catastrophic for the Craxi. Ships were torn apart as sections of their hulls reappeared intersecting with other sections. Organic components failed as their molecular structure was subtly rearranged. Systems crashed as their quantum states were randomized. In a single moment, the heart of the Craxi formation was transformed from an organized swarm into scattered debris. Pulse complete, Dr. Tanaka's voice came through, shaking but triumphant. Core stability at 62% and holding. We can't do that again, Captain. We won't need to, Ilara replied, watching as the remaining Craxi vessels began to retreat, their hive mind apparently recognizing a threat it couldn't immediately adapt to. Status report. Minimal damage to outer hull sections, Wei reported, sounding almost disbelieving. Railgun batteries at 50% ammunition. Prometheus shield operating at reduced efficiency, but functional. The comm system suddenly activated. This is Fleet Commander Jevexis to ESS Defiant. What did you just do? Ilara exchanged glances with Wei before responding. We turned the tide, Commander. The Craxi are retreating. There was a long pause before the Procyon replied. So they are. It seems the Council may have underestimated humanity's contribution. As the Defiant rejoined the battered but surviving Concorde fleet, Ilara knew that everything had changed. Humanity would no longer be dismissed as primitive newcomers. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's lone ship until it reached the battlefield and showed what human ingenuity could truly accomplish. Set course to rendezvous with the Concorde fleet, she ordered, finally allowing herself to relax slightly in her chair and prepare a full report for Earth Command. I think we've earned ourselves a seat at the grown-ups table. Turning the tide. News of the Defiant's unexpected victory spread through the galactic Concorde like wildfire. Holographic transmissions carried footage of the human vessel tearing through the Craxi formation, its mysterious shield deflecting attacks that had shredded the advanced warships of older species. Within the crystalline halls of the Concorde's central station, whispers of the human anomaly replaced the dismissive jokes that had once followed Captain Ilara Chen. But aboard the Defiant itself, the atmosphere was far from celebratory. Core stability at 41% and declining, Dr. Tanaka reported grimly, his holographic projection flickering slightly as he transmitted from the engineering deck. The Prometheus system wasn't designed to channel that much energy at once. We've burned out key components that we can't replace without returning to Earth. Ilara nodded, studying the damage reports on her datapad. Around her, the bridge crew worked tirelessly to maintain the systems that had been strained by their desperate gambit at Arcturus. What's our operational capacity? We can maintain basic shield functions and limited fold space jumps, Tanaka replied after a moment's calculation. Maybe 3 or 4 at most. But another pulse is out of the question, and even sustained high output from the shield would likely cause a cascade failure. Commander Wei, standing at Ilara's side, spoke quietly. The Concorde doesn't know. They think we can do it again. And that perception might be our greatest weapon right now, Ilara agreed, dismissing the hologram with a gesture. Status of the Concorde fleet. Lieutenant Novak activated the tactical display, showing the remnants of the Allied forces regrouping around a nearby gas giant. 37 vessels remained operational after the Arcturus engagement. They've been joined by reinforcements from the core systems, another 53 ships. The Craxi retreated to the edge of the system, but haven't left. Intelligence suggests they're being reinforced as well. They're adapting, Ilara murmured. The Craxi's greatest strength was their ability to analyze enemy tactics and technology, then evolve countermeasures. They might have been caught off guard by the Defiant's unconventional approach, but they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The communications console chimed. Captain, we're being hailed by the Concorde flagship, Lieutenant Reyes announced. On screen, the image of Fleet Commander Jevexis appeared, his posture noticeably different from their previous interactions. Gone was the condescension. In its place, a guarded respect. Captain Chen, he began, the Concorde War Council will convene in 1 standard hour aboard the Radiant Spear. Your presence is requested. Ilara raised an eyebrow slightly. Requested, not ordered. The Procyon's whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. After your ship's performance at Arcturus, I find myself reconsidering the appropriate protocol. The Council wishes to discuss strategy for the next phase of this conflict. I'll be there, Ilara confirmed, and the transmission ended. Wei turned to her, his expression concerned. They're going to want us to use the Prometheus pulse again. Almost certainly, Ilara agreed. And we're going to have to convince them we can deliver without actually revealing that we can't. The War Council chamber aboard the Radiant Spear was a stark contrast to the Grand Hall where the Concorde's political representatives met. This was a utilitarian space designed for military efficiency rather than diplomatic posturing. Representatives from each species in the fleet sat around a circular table, holographic displays showing tactical information hovering above its center. As Ilara entered, she felt the weight of their attention. The dismissive glances were gone, replaced by calculating stares. Captain Chen, Fleet Commander Jevexis acknowledged her. Please join us. We were discussing the Craxi response to the Battle of Arcturus. Ilara took the offered seat, noting that it had been positioned directly opposite Jovexis, a place of significance. What have we learned about their movements? A Korvax tactician, his scales gleaming under the chamber's lights, manipulated the holographic display to show the current position of the Kraxi forces. They've consolidated at these coordinates. Our long-range sensors indicate they've been joined by at least 300 additional vessels. More concerning is the structural changes we're observing in their existing ships. The display zoomed in on one of the insectoid vessels, highlighting modifications to its hull. Layers of what appeared to be dense, overlapping plates covering previously vulnerable areas. They're adapting to kinetic weapons, Ilara observed, her mind racing. The Kraxi had analyzed the Defiance railguns and were already evolving countermeasures. Indeed, the Korvax agreed. But more troubling are these energy signatures. The display shifted again, showing unusual radiation patterns emanating from clusters of smaller Kraxi vessels. They appear to be generating localized spatial distortions. They're trying to counter the Prometheus shield, Ilara realized. They don't understand exactly what it does, but they're attempting to disrupt any manipulation of spacetime. Jovexis leaned forward, which brings us to the purpose of this council. The Kraxi are preparing for a major offensive. Based on their movements, we believe they will strike at the Helios Gateway, the jump point that would give them access to 12 core systems, including several heavily populated worlds. The implications were clear. If the Kraxi broke through at Helios, the war could quickly become a slaughter. "We need your weapon, Captain," said an Ardani representative, her gelatinous form pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The Prometheus pulse. With it, we could shatter their formation before it fully forms. Ilara met their expectant gazes calmly, despite the churning in her stomach. The truth, that the Defiant couldn't produce another pulse without likely destroying itself, would shatter the newfound confidence the Concord had in humanity. But false hope could lead to a devastating military miscalculation. She chose her words carefully. The Prometheus system is unique technology, still in its experimental stages. What you witnessed at Arcturus pushed our systems to their limits. But it can be done again. Jovexis pressed. Potentially, Ilara replied truthfully, but not in the same manner. The Kraxi are already adapting. A direct approach would likely fail. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her statement sank in. The Concord species had come to rely on technological superiority for so long that the concept of an enemy that could render their advantages obsolete was deeply unsettling. "Then what do you propose, Captain Chen?" asked Jovexis finally. Ilara stood and approached the holographic display. The Kraxi adapt to what they understand. Their countermeasures are based on their analysis of our previous engagement, so we give them something new to analyze. Something that will occupy their adaptive capabilities while we strike from an unexpected angle. She manipulated the display, outlining a bold strategy that would use the Defiant not as a superweapon, but as bait, drawing the Kraxi's attention while a combined Concord fleet executed a complex flanking maneuver. It was a plan that respected the new reality, that no single technological advantage would win this war. When she finished, the council chamber was silent again, but this time with thoughtful consideration rather than shock. "It could work," the Korvax tactician admitted finally. "But it places your vessel at extreme risk, Captain." "War always carries risk," Ilara replied simply. "The Defiant was built to protect humanity's future in this galaxy. We'll do whatever is necessary to fulfill that mission." The plan was approved, though not without debate. As the council adjourned, Fleet Commander Jovexis approached Ilara privately. "Your ship cannot generate another pulse, can it?" he asked quietly, his keen eyes studying her reaction. Ilara met his gaze steadily. "Would you have listened to my strategy if you believed we could?" The Procyon's whiskers twitched. "Perhaps not. The Concord has grown complacent in many ways. We've relied on technological superiority for too long." He paused. "Your species is young, Captain Chen, but you think differently than the rest of us. That may prove to be your greatest contribution to this war. Let's hope it's enough, Ilara replied. The Helios Gateway was a natural phenomenon, a region where the fabric of space-time was thinner, allowing for faster and more efficient faster-than-light travel. Strategically, it was invaluable, connecting dozens of star systems through a network of cosmic shortcuts. If the Craxi seized control of it, they could strike at the heart of Concord space with little warning. The Defiant hung in space near the gateway, apparently isolated and vulnerable. Its position had been deliberately leaked through channels the Concord knew the Craxi monitored. The bait had been set. On the bridge, tension was palpable as the crew watched the long-range sensors for signs of the enemy's approach. "Any word from the fleet?" Ilara asked, her fingers drumming lightly on the arm of her chair. Lieutenant Rice shook her head. "Nothing, Captain. They've gone silent as planned. The Ardani stealth field appears to be working." The plan relied on precise timing and coordination. The main Concord fleet had taken position behind Helios's third planet, hidden by advanced Ardani cloaking technology. They would remain there, undetected, until the Craxi committed fully to attacking the seemingly isolated Defiant. "Contact," Novak called out suddenly. "Multiple Craxi signatures entering the system. They're not bothering with stealth, Captain. They want us to see them coming." The tactical display lit up with incoming enemy vessels, hundreds of them, approaching in a formation that resembled the mandibles of a massive insect, ready to close around the Defiant and crush it. "They're confident," Wei observed grimly. "They think they have us figured out." Ilara nodded. "Good. Let them think that. Begin power-up sequence for Prometheus core. Make it obvious. I want their sensors to detect every flicker of energy." The Defiant systems hummed as the core began to cycle up, not to full capacity, which wasn't possible in its damaged state, but enough to create a distinctive energy signature that the Craxi would recognize from Arcturus. "They're adjusting course," Novak reported, watching the tactical display. "Spreading out their formation. They're trying to minimize the impact of another pulse. And activating their spatial distortion generators," added Wei. "Just as we predicted." Ilara allowed herself a small smile. The Craxi were committing their resources to countering a threat that the Defiant couldn't actually produce, exactly as she had hoped. "Now we see if they take the bait fully," she murmured. "Continue power cycling. Make it look like we're building toward another pulse." The Craxi fleet continued its approach, now arranged in a dispersed formation designed to minimize casualties from another spatial distortion attack. They were being cautious, adapting their tactics based on their analysis of the previous battle. "They're entering optimal firing range," Novak announced. "Their weapons are charging." Ilara leaned forward. "Shield status." "Prometheus shield at 38% capacity," Wei reported. "It won't hold against a concentrated assault." "It doesn't need to," Ilara replied. "Just long enough for—" Her words were cut off as the ship shuddered under the first wave of Craxi attacks. Energy beams and exotic particles slammed into the Defiant spatial distortion field, straining the damaged system. Shield efficiency dropping rapidly, Wei called out over the noise of straining systems. 32%, 29%. The Craxi pressed their attack, confident in their newly evolved countermeasures. What they failed to realize was that they were focusing so intently on the Defiant that they had neglected their rear guard. "Signal the fleet," Ilara ordered as another impact rocked the ship. "Execute Phase 2. From behind the third planet, the Concord fleet emerged from stealth, their engines flaring as they accelerated toward the unsuspecting Craxi forces. The aliens had committed fully to destroying the Defiant, exactly as Ilara had predicted. "Incoming transmission from Fleet Commander Zhivexis," Rise announced. "Audio only." "The Concord fleet is engaging," came the Procyon's voice through the speakers. "Your strategy appears to be working, Captain. The Craxi were not expecting our approach vector." The tactical display showed the Concorde ships striking the rear of the Craxi formation, their combined firepower devastating against the unprepared enemy. But the Craxi were quick to respond, their vessels already beginning to turn and reorganize. They're adapting, Wei warned, dividing their forces to engage the fleet, and still maintaining pressure on us. Ilara noted as another hit caused the lights on the bridge to flicker. Shield status, 19% and falling. Wei replied grimly. We can't take much more of this. Ilara knew they had reached the critical moment. The plan had worked. The Craxi had been caught off guard, and the Concorde fleet was inflicting significant damage. But the Defiant had played its part as bait too well. The enemy ships surrounding them were not breaking off to join the main battle. Dr. Tanaka, she called over the comm. Status of the Prometheus core. Unstable but functional, came the engineer's strained voice. Whatever you're planning, Captain, I wouldn't recommend pushing it much further. Ilara made her decision. Redirect all power to the fold drive. Prepare for emergency jump. We looked at her sharply. Captain, a fold jump this close to the gateway, with the core in its current state, is extremely risky, Ilara finished for him. But staying here is certain destruction. Navigation. Set coordinates for the center of the Craxi formation that's engaging the Concorde fleet. The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances, but followed her orders with practiced efficiency. The Defiant's engines hummed as power was diverted from its failing shields to the fold drive. Fold drive charge, reported the navigation officer. But Captain, with the core instability, I can't guarantee where we'll end up. None of us can guarantee tomorrow, Ilara replied with a grim smile. Execute jump. The familiar sensation of folding space enveloped the Defiant, but this time it was different, rougher, more violent. The ship shuddered and groaned as reality bent around it, the damaged Prometheus core struggling to maintain the fold space envelope. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the Defiant existed in a state between normal space and the dimensional pocket of fold space. Alarms blared across every deck as systems strained beyond their design parameters. And then, with a final wrenching sensation, the ship tore back into normal space, directly in the midst of the Craxi forces attacking the Concorde fleet. We've arrived, Wei announced, checking the ship's position. Minimal drift from target coordinates. The Craxi are adjusting to our presence. Ilara didn't waste a moment. All power to railguns. Fire everything we have. The Defiant's electromagnetic accelerators roared to life, launching their deadly projectiles at point-blank range into the surrounding Craxi vessels. At such close quarters, even the reinforced hulls the aliens had evolved couldn't withstand the kinetic impact. Ships shattered around them, creating a momentary bubble of debris that provided some protection. The Concorde fleet is pressing their advantage, Novik reported, watching as the Allied vessels intensified their attack on the now divided Craxi forces. But the respite was brief. The remaining Craxi ships quickly reorganized, their hive-mind coordination allowing them to adapt to the Defiant's sudden appearance. Within moments, they had surrounded the human vessel once again, their weapons charging for a concentrated assault that the damaged ship couldn't hope to survive. Captain, Dr. Tanaka's voice came over the comm, strained and urgent. The core is destabilizing. We're looking at a cascade failure within minutes. Ilara exchanged a long look with Wei, an entire conversation passing between them without words. They both knew what a core failure meant, and what it could do. All hands, prepare to abandon ship, Ilara ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the command. Launch all escape pods on my mark. Wei stepped closer. Captain, the Prometheus core, if it fails while we're still in normal space. I know, Ilara cut him off. That's why I'm staying. Someone needs to make sure it fails at exactly the right moment. The bridge fell silent as her intention became clear. With all due respect, Captain, Wei said quietly, I cannot allow you to sacrifice yourself alone. That's an order, Commander, Ilara replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. Humanity needs officers like you for what's coming. I need you to make sure our people understand what happened here. The ship rocked as another barrage of Craxi weapons struck their failing defenses. Escape pods ready, Lieutenant Rice reported, her voice tight with emotion. Ilara stood from her captain's chair. Launch all pods. Commander Wei, you have your orders. Wei hesitated for one last moment, then snapped to attention with a sharp salute. It has been an honor, Captain. The honor was mine, Ilara replied. Now go. As the bridge crew reluctantly made their way to the escape pods, Ilara established a direct link to the engineering deck. Dr. Tanaka, status of the core. Critical, the engineer replied. Full destabilization in approximately 3 minutes. I've initiated emergency shutdown procedures, but... Cancel those procedures, Ilara interrupted. I need you to do the opposite. Disengage all safety protocols and channel maximum power to the core. There was a pause. Captain, that would cause a catastrophic failure. The resulting fold space rupture would destroy everything within at least 5,000 kilometers. Exactly, Ilara confirmed. Can you rig it to detonate on my command? Another pause, longer this time. Yes, but Captain, the escape pods won't be clear of the blast radius in time. They will if the Craxi are too busy with me to notice them, Ilara replied, moving to the navigation console. Now get to your escape pod, Doctor. That's an order. As the last of her crew evacuated, Ilara sat alone on the bridge of the Defiant. Outside, the Craxi had completely surrounded the vessel, their ships moving in for the kill. They had no way of knowing that their prey was now bait of a different kind. This is Captain Ilara Chen of the ESS Defiant to all Concord vessels. She broadcast on an open channel. Clear the area immediately. I repeat, clear the area. She didn't wait for acknowledgement. With skilled hands, she guided the Defiant into a spiraling course that took it deeper into the heart of the Craxi formation. Every evasive maneuver, every burst of speed was calculated to draw more enemy ships into closer proximity. Core destabilization at 98%. The ship's computer reported dispassionately. Catastrophic failure imminent. Ilara opened a channel to Fleet Commander Jovexis. Commander, ensure all Concord vessels maintain distance from the Craxi concentration, and tell Earth that the Defiant completed its mission. The Procyon's voice came back, understanding dawning in his tone. It will be done, Captain Chen. The Concord will remember this day. Make sure they remember why it happened, Ilara replied. Humanity doesn't want to fight alone. We want to stand alongside the other species of this galaxy, as equals. As the last seconds counted down, Ilara allowed herself a moment of reflection. The Defiant had been built because humanity had no choice but to innovate. Ignored and dismissed by the established powers of the galaxy, Earth had pursued its own path, developing technologies that the Concord had deemed impossible or impractical. Now, those same technologies would save countless lives across the galaxy. Core destabilization complete, announced the computer. Fold space rupture in 3, 2, 1. Ilara closed her eyes. For Earth, the Prometheus core didn't simply fail, it tore a hole in the fabric of reality. As the concentrated energies of fold space erupted from the Defiant's heart, they created a catastrophic distortion that engulfed everything within range. Craxi vessels were pulled apart as portions of their structure were dragged into different dimensional planes. The very space they occupied twisted and folded upon itself, creating a maelstrom of energy that left nothing intact. When the rupture finally collapsed upon itself, a vast, empty region of space remained where once the heart of the Craxi invasion fleet had been. The remaining enemy vessels, suddenly cut off from their hive-mind coordination, fell into disarray, easy targets for the regrouping Concord fleet. The escape pods from the Defiant, having been largely ignored by the Craxi in their focus on the main vessel, were recovered by Concord ships. Commander Wei, now the highest-ranking survivor, stood in the observation deck of the Radiant Spear, watching as the combined fleet mopped up the last of the disoriented Craxi forces. "Your captain understood sacrifice," Fleet Commander Javexis said, joining him at the viewport. "Few in the Concorde do anymore. We've grown comfortable in our technological superiority, forgetting the cost of peace." We nodded silently, his eyes fixed on the empty space where the Defiant had made its final stand. "The Council has convened an emergency session," the Procyon continued. "They wish to hear directly from you about this Prometheus technology. There is talk of establishing a permanent human delegation to the Concorde's military command." Captain Chen would have appreciated that, White replied quietly. She believed humanity had something to offer beyond just following in the footsteps of older species. She was right. Javexis acknowledged. "The Craxi adapt to what they understand, as your captain observed. They understood the technologies of the Concorde because we have all developed along similar lines for millennia. But humanity, you took a different path. That difference may be what saves us all." The aftermath of the Battle of Helios Gateway rippled through the galactic Concorde like a shockwave. The sacrifice of the Defiant and its captain became a rallying point, not just for humans, but for all species who recognized that diversity of approach might be their greatest weapon against the Craxi threat. The wreckage of the Defiant was never recovered. The fold space rupture had left nothing substantial behind. But its legacy grew with each passing day, as Concorde engineers began working alongside human scientists to explore technologies they had previously dismissed as primitive or impossible. 1 month after the battle, a new ship emerged from Earth's orbital shipyards, the first of what would become known as the Prometheus fleet. It resembled the Defiant in its utilitarian design, but incorporated elements of Concorde technology, creating a hybrid approach that represented the new cooperation between humanity and the established galactic powers. On its hull, beneath the name ESS Chen, was inscribed a simple phrase that captured the lesson the galaxy had learned from humanity's lone ship: "Innovation thrives where convention falters." The galaxy had laughed at humanity's contribution to the war, until that single ship turned the tide of battle and changed the course of galactic history forever. In the Grand Council chamber where Captain Ilara Chen had once stood alone, facing the mockery of the assembled representatives, Commander Jackson Wee now took his place at the table, no longer relegated to the sidelines, but seated among equals. The human delegation, once dismissed as an afterthought, now commanded respect born not from ancient lineage or technological superiority, but from the courage to think differently. "The Craxi have withdrawn from 3 additional systems," reported a Korvax tactical officer, her scales reflecting the light as she manipulated the holographic display. "Their adaptation rate has slowed considerably. They seem hesitant. They encountered something they couldn't immediately understand," Wei observed. "That uncertainty has disrupted their confidence." Arbitrator Vexinar, who had once dismissed the Defiant with contemptuous laughter, now inclined his head respectfully. "Commander Wei speaks wisely. The Craxi evolved to counter predictable patterns of technological development. Humanity's divergent approach introduces variables they cannot easily account for. Then we must continue to be unpredictable," declared the Ardani representative. "Our scientists have been studying the Prometheus principles that Commander Wei has shared. While we cannot replicate the exact technology, the conceptual framework has opened new avenues of research." Wei allowed himself a small smile, knowing that Captain Chen would have appreciated this moment. Humanity had earned its place not through mimicry of established powers, but by offering a genuinely new perspective forged from necessity and isolation. The meeting concluded with a unanimous vote to establish a joint research initiative, bringing together minds from all Concorde species to explore the theoretical foundations of the Prometheus technology. As Wei left the chamber, he was approached by a young human woman in the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. "Commander Wei," she greeted him. "I just received word from Earth. The second Prometheus-class vessel has been completed. They're waiting for your recommendation on the name." Wei didn't hesitate. "The Defiant's legacy," he replied. to remind us all of where this began, with one ship that refused to be dismissed. The diplomat nodded, making a note. There's something else. The Concorde has formally requested that Earth send additional ships to join the fleet. They're specifically asking for vessels with human design principles, even if they're not equipped with full Prometheus technology. How times change, Wei remarked with a touch of irony. How many ships are they requesting? All of them, she replied with a smile. Every ship Earth can spare. The galaxy that had once mocked humanity's lone vessel now looked to Earth's fleet as its best hope against an adaptive enemy. The Defiant had done more than turn the tide of a single battle. It had transformed humanity's place in the galactic order. As Wei gazed out at the stars through the station's viewport, he could almost imagine Captain Chen standing beside him, witnessing the fulfillment of her belief in humanity's potential. The ESS Defiant had been just one ship, cobbled together from technology the Concorde had deemed primitive and obsolete. But in the end, it had proven that innovation often flourishes most vibrantly not in the comfortable halls of established power, but at the edges, where necessity drives creativity and conventional wisdom holds no sway. The galaxy had learned that lesson now, and it would never again underestimate the contributions of its youngest species.